Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. But Joe, what are we doing for this special episode?
Well, this week we are doing our Thanksgiving Q&A, which is sort of what we do, the laid-back episode, to give us a break from researching the week of the American holiday. So, yeah, different episode than usual.
Yeah, so we're not bringing two games to the table. Instead, we're bringing a handful of questions, and it's definitely a shorter episode this time around, but it's just a good way for us to kick back, relax, and kind of interact with your questions. Let's start with our first one then, and it comes from our friend Matt, your co-host over at the Smashterpieces podcast.
Known criminal.
He asks, what's a game song you first heard out of context that ended up being used differently than you expected?
So, we were talking about this before recording. I don't think I have an answer to this question, and I know exactly why. It's pretty much entirely because for a long time, I didn't listen to soundtracks when I hadn't played the game first. So I don't actually hear a lot of video game songs out of context unless it's like being used in the background of a YouTube video. And even then, like, I'll recognize it when I play the game, but you know, it's like that Deadly Premonition song. I forget what it's called.
Oh,
the
yes.
whistling song.
Yes.
Like, I hear that all over the place, but I know what it's from because it hit with that context when I actually played Deadly Premonition myself. Like, I don't hear songs out of context very often.
I feel like that song from Deadly Premonition is a good one. Also, there's another one from ActRaiser, and I think it's the world map theme.
Yeah, the town builder theme.
Yeah.
The birth of the people, I think is what it's called.
Right. That sounds right. So, yeah, things like that where you hear it in like a YouTube video.
Or Burn Bobanga. You hear that a lot.
Sure. So, yeah, things like that where you hear it in a YouTube video or a meme out of context, and then you get to hear it. A couple ones that came to mind for me was another meme song was You and Owen Was Her from Toho 6. Covered that this year. Did not expect that to be like the ultimate secret final boss theme. You know, ended up being too popular. I wouldn't have expected it to be such a niche, you know, when you get really good at that game and hit it on that difficulty. Another one was Pleather for Breakfast from No More Heroes. I feel like I had heard that one and really liked the groove of it, and then didn't think that Bad Girl would be as high on the Assassins ranking list as well. So I think that's a really good pick though for like these songs you hear on YouTube videos and memes and things like that.
Yeah, like we've heard from a couple of our friends now where we'll do an episode on something. We'll be like, yeah, this is a really well-known song. And they're like, I'll be the judge of that. Oh God, I've heard this in a bunch of YouTube videos. I didn't know it was from this. Just constantly. It's a really interesting sort of
phenomenon.
Yeah. And it's almost always from Chrono Trigger, I feel like, which is weird to me. Listen to the Chrono Trigger soundtrack more, people.
Mm-hmm. Also, let's get a good Chrono Trigger remake up in here.
2.5D.
Yeah, HD 2D, whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah. All right, HD 2D. Why did I say 2.5D? Give me an HD 2D, baby. I want that. And 6 as well. These are my demands. All right, let's get to the next question, which is, which soundtrack did you hate at first but warmed up to, and vice versa? That would be from Roran.
So I think it's tough to say for both of us because, you know, we don't really dislike soundtracks. It's either like a soundtrack is great, it fits really well, it's pretty good, or it's disinteresting. Like it's not a good fit, or it's just like it's average or whatever. But I can't think of like a soundtrack I've really hated though. And of course there are bad soundtracks out there, don't get me wrong. I mean, we almost had our mean streak of an April Fool's Day where we talked about like Sonic Chronicles, The Dark Brotherhood, and God, what was the one you were going to talk about?
I was going to talk about Link, The Faces of Evil.
Right. So, I mean, these soundtracks that, yeah, okay, they're not good, but oftentimes, like, the games that we choose to play, like, we're not hitting that kind of level, right? So, if one comes to mind, though, kind of looking back at, like, the games we've covered or games from the past, coming across Red Steel makes you think of how there are songs on that soundtrack that, like, when you're playing it, yeah, you don't like it. And I think it's the Most Dangerous Game track on Red Steel. So, like, it's the one that takes place in, like, the kind of horror environment with the rabbits and all the, like, evil cackling in the background. Do, 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 do. Like, it's one of these songs, it's like, yeah, you don't really enjoy it when you're playing it. But over time, like, that's the song that I recognize the most with that game. And that soundtrack is also a little all over the place. So maybe that'd be one for, I guess, hate's not the right word, but, you know, definitely warmed up to it with nostalgia. Vice versa, it's tough. I don't think there's much of an example of, you know, repetition that kind of wears on you. I can't think of one, honestly, for for Vice Versa.
For me, I'm kind of in the same boat. I agree with you that, like, either a soundtrack is good or, like, just is not memorable. Because if a game has a bad soundtrack, I mean, that takes away a lot of my interest and I just don't play it. I think I have songs where at first I hated it and then liked it. Crimson Cloud from Devil May Cry 5 is a big one. I thought that song was terrible when I first heard it. Now it is my second favorite song in the game. As well as Otherworld from Final Fantasy X. I first heard that song in Theatrhythm and thought it was the worst. And now it's, again, one of my favorite songs in the game. Also, those are both, like, metal things. So maybe that has something to do with it. As far as Vice Versa, I think the closest I can think of, I don't have an exact example either, but, like, I tend to get a little bit tired of random Pokemon encounter music.
Okay.
Pretty quick.
Or just JRPGs in general.
Yeah, just like if your JRPG has random encounters, it kind of just comes with the territory that I'm going to get tired of the battle theme after a while, which is why I really liked Ekenfell, where, like, depending on where you are in the story, the battle music is different.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good thing to do. It's also why I sing the praises of the Kanto Wild Pokemon battle theme in Pokemon Gen 2, because it's like, oh, something different. Oh, thank you. And it works super well.
Yeah, and that just comes with the repetition. That makes sense. I get you there. Our next question comes from DVD Smith, and he says, how important is it to you whether a soundtrack fits the game it's written for compared to its overall quality? Would you rather have a brilliant OST that didn't fit the game setting at all, or an OST that was average but fit its setting perfectly?
So this is a really, really good question.
He usually is very thoughtful on these. I do appreciate his questions.
Yes. And honestly, I don't know. Because we've talked about a couple of soundtracks just this year where it was basically like, yeah, the soundtrack gets panned because it does not fit the game at all, but the soundtrack is incredible if you listen to it on its own. Like Sonic R is the best example of that, I think.
With a bullet.
Where that soundtrack is phenomenal. Does not fit the game at all. I think I personally, in terms of just the music, I prefer a soundtrack that is memorable. If it's not going to be both, I would at least like it to stand out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for me, there are going to be soundtracks that, you know, do stand out or are great and all that. But as far as playing the game, I would want the fit to take priority. As far as just listening to music and learning about new soundtracks, for me, you know, especially as we start to dig into Best of 2021, I'd like it to have a brilliant soundtrack. You know, games that I haven't gotten to, like Bravely Default 2. It's nice to hear the tracks in there that really stand out. I don't know if they fit well with, you know, the game and what it's doing and all that, but I appreciate it for having those tracks in there just on the listening to music aspect of it. But if I were playing the game, I want something that complements and fits it well. This question makes me think of Metal Gear Rising, actually.
Yeah.
Because you think those songs on its own, like they stand out. That is a soundtrack that goes hard, and there aren't many soundtracks like it with its rock, big bombastic songs. But it also does fit well with the boss action. So that's a game where it's a bit of both. And that is like the perfect example. And then I think that's why people hold it up as such a positive, prominent example of a soundtrack that does both, actually. But yeah, I think there is the distinction of, if I were playing the game, I'd want the fit to take priority. If I'm just listening to the soundtrack without game context, I want the music to take priority.
That is fair. And also, I will still go to my grave considering Metal Gear Rising to be some of the best sound design in terms of its soundtrack ever. It's just so good.
And for all the games that tried to emulate it, well, even like we talked about how Devil May Cry 5 tried to do it, and it still didn't hit the same way. I think if you have like the incremental steps with, the scoring system and all that, that's one thing, but there is something to be said with what Metal Gear Rising did with an instrumental version of the song to then finally kick in with vocals. Like, the difference there is huge, and it just stands out in a big way.
Yeah, hitting Mistral and the vocals come in is like the coolest sound experience I've ever had. It's really, really cool. I actually used Rules of Nature in a stream recently.
Oh, yes.
I was in Deep Jungle playing Kingdom Hearts, and I was doing the last fight with the Jaguar, and I paused the game and I pulled up Rules of Nature, and I killed him to Rules of Nature. It was fun.
Let's go.
So that is a shining example. And I agree. I think the context of how you're experiencing it matters a lot. Let's do a return question from 2019. If you could swap two composers for one game, what combination do you think would be the funniest? This question was originally asked by Major Moses.
Yeah, so the idea here, I'm trying to remember what we did at the time. I think I did something like swapping Shoji Meguro from Persona 3 with Gustavo Santaolalla from The Last of Us. And those were games we had covered at the time. So swapping those composers and kind of putting their soundtracks in those respective games that'd be pretty funny. Now that we've covered more, and granted, it's been a little tougher this last year. I don't know if you realize this when kind of looking this over, but since we've covered a lot of the big boys and girls, so to speak, as far as like what their prominent style is, now that we're kind of like digging into the depths a little bit more, their soundtracks that like don't stand out immediately, right? As far as like having this distinct composer style. But I think I found a pair which was really interesting. We bring back Richard Jacques to talk about his soundtrack on Sonic R with those peppy J-pop songs. What if we paired that with Ilana Shkeri and his work on Ghost of Tsushima? So Jin Sakai is running across feudal Japan, and it's living in the city, you got to survive.
Take me back in time.
Oh my God, yes. But then at the same time, you're racing around in vehicles with Sonic characters, and you get some of the traditional feudal Japan instrumentation there. And so, I just think that'd be amusing.
Work it out. For me, I have a very similar answer, and it's inspired by a recent episode, which is put Bear McCreary on Loco Roco 3, and then put Nobuyuki Shimizu and all the other Loco Roco composers on Call of Duty Happy Warfare. This is my demand.
Great.
And neither of them should change their styles up at all.
UAV online.
Headshot. Oh God, it would be amazing. It would be amazing. Children singing over why isn't there a surreal Call of Duty game yet? I want that. Give me like a weird, drugged up, surreal trip.
So some of these questions we like to bring back every year because it makes sense, and we kind of reflect on the games we've talked about so far this year, and this one is no different. We brought it back for, it's now the third episode we've done this. Oh my gosh. Okay. What has been your favorite game to talk about so far in 2021? And what's your favorite game that the other person has brought to the table?
As usually, I can never pick just one.
Oh, yeah, no.
Every time I pick multiple. I really like talking about Heaven's Vault. I think that game is really cool. And I think it's got like a gorgeous soundtrack. Obviously, like Montanui Online game, I think I'm the most proud of my part of that episode than I am of basically any other episode we've done, and that says something because we released some damn good episodes.
We did this year. We're on a tear.
And I also very, very much loved learning more about House of the Dead 2 and the just baddie stuff that happens in that game and its soundtrack, which is just bizarre. And I love House of the Dead 2. In terms of games I really found interesting learning about, I had never heard of Journey to Silius, and I think that was a very, very fun pick. Obviously, Grim Fandango. Come on.
Yeah.
DVD Smith is streaming that right now as we record. And also, I really liked learning about Peace Walker because I'm sure not going to go try playing Peace Walker again. So getting to listen through some of the soundtrack without having to play that game that I don't like, I think that was very valuable. And I think you did a great job with all three of those, honestly.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that one. Yeah, Grim Fandango is one that does stand out to me, as I really did have a good time talking about that one this year. Because I had like mixed experiences going through the game and just how the point and click adventure was at the time versus how did it stand up really well. But the music is just remarkable. Hades is one that I think was a good time to talk about because we both love that game, and that was a good time to talk about that one. And oddly enough, for the first year that we've done solo episodes, I think there was something to when I talked about Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Not only just a deep connection to that game and that soundtrack, but starting to learn about musicians, which you had started earlier with Tina Guo and her cello work on Journey, but to cover Kristen Nygus and her woodwind work, not only on that game but her career. I think that was a really fun one to talk about.
And now I see Kristen Nygus in so many credits. I recognize her name now because I've seen it in the credits for so many indie games now. It's nuts. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's just one of the delights that this show can bring. As far as games that you covered, I've got a couple that you mentioned that you're proud of, actually. So, Montanui Online game was a really good one. A game I'd never heard of, but you had such a connection to your childhood with that one that it made it special. And for the fact that, not many people talk about it or its soundtrack anymore. It was like kind of like an unearthing a relic in a way. And I think that was special. Speaking of unearthing relics and artifacts and things like that, Heaven's Vault, not a game I've gotten to yet, but you definitely put together a good presentation on that one and made it really, really interesting. And then I also enjoyed hearing about Trauma Team for the little experience I had about it to discover that there was so much more.
There's a whole half of the game you weren't aware of.
Or like 2/3. But yeah, that was another really good one that I enjoyed. It was a great job, I think, on both of our fronts this year. Not to pat ourselves on the back, but...
No, I'll pat ourselves on the back. We had a good year.
We put together some real banger episodes. That's fantastic.
So, our next question, I believe you put this down, which I didn't even think to put this here, but what's your favorite episode of Smashterpieces this year?
Yeah, so go listen to your other podcast that you do, Smashterpieces, where you and Matt go through the Super Smash Brothers Ultimate character roster, and you've assigned one game for each of them, and you're going through all those games. And so, as your editor on the show, I just figured if we're going to talk about other things besides video game music, let's bring it up.
Yeah.
I think the Pikmin one stands out to me because it's a game that I really don't know anything about. I think I tried like 30 minutes of Pikmin and didn't take to it all that well, and did the same thing for Pikmin 3. And again, same thing. It's not my kind of game, but hearing you all talk about it, DVD Smith did a great job as a guest on that one, really bringing a fresh perspective, an experienced perspective with that game as well. And I think that was a really solid one. I also like the Luigi's Mansion episode. I think those were 2 solid back-to-back episodes.
I agree with both of those, especially Pikmin has a close spot in my heart now because it was one of those games where going into it, people were like, oh, he's probably not going to like it. This is not going to be his kind of game. And I had so much fun with that game. I accidentally did 2 4-hour streams. I never do that. I try to avoid going over 3 hours maximum if I can. So getting to talk with DVD Smith about that and Matt, and they're both super passionate about that series. They both love Pikmin. And yeah, I think it was fun. I loved doing the Animal Crossing episode. Just everything about how we did it, where it was the pre-recorded stuff that was then edited, and then doing the episode with, granted, man, doing an episode with 4 people is hard. Doing an episode with 3 people is hard. But like putting together 4 different schedules and getting them in for recording, like it's a stressful time, at least for me. I have a lot of anxiety around that kind of thing. But like, I think it just, everything about our time with Animal Crossing turned out so well. And honestly, I think it might be my favorite thing we've done for the show thus far.
It was certainly your biggest technological accomplishment. So kudos there for pulling that off with everyone. And Matt did a huge part in that with all the video editing. Oh my goodness.
He was editing those videos for months before people saw them.
Another fun question that we like to bring back is, have you gone back and played any of the games that the other person brought to the table that you hadn't played yet?
So obviously we talked about on the show, I played Danganronpa finally this year.
You got off that schneid, yeah.
After several years of you and others telling me, hey, you'd really like Danganronpa, you should play Danganronpa. And I did. I liked Danganronpa quite a bit. Looking forward to the Switch release in like 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Next week at time of release, yeah. Wow.
I think you'll appreciate having that portably. When you talk about like a game that you play before bed or whatever, like that's going to be the perfect place to play 2 and 3 for sure.
Mm-hmm. And of course, soon, within the next couple months, I'll be playing Metroid Prime for Smashterpieces for the first time. I've never played it. So I'm looking forward to that, especially after having learned more about it on the show.
It holds up surprisingly well, I think you'll find. Having a lock on in that game is huge. So for me, I decided to check off a couple of the shorter indie games that you had brought to the table, whether it was, oh, I happen to have this in my collection somewhere, or hey, it's on Game Pass. So I checked off A Short Hike, which is now available on PlayStation and Xbox, or it should be at least by the time this comes out. Like they're starting to do a PR push for that. If you want to play that game in 4K, go for it.
Something about the idea of playing a game that is purposely trying to look low res in 4K, just, it's really funny.
Mm-hmm. And then Piku Niku was a really short, fun experience and kicking things around with your legs. So
chaos energy abound in that one. It's always nice to, because I think last year I had it with God of War. It might have been the year before that. I think it was the year before that. Where I played it a long while after we'd recorded our first episode. And I think you also mentioned this about like Katamari. You played that very shortly after we did that episode.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh man, it's kind of weird, but like I have a higher appreciation for this game's soundtrack, having heard it and learned about what went into it ahead of time. And I think that's just, it's really neat when it works out that way.
Yeah, it's one of the special things about doing this show, I think.
Next, if you'll remember, at the beginning of the year, I brought up 10 video game resolutions, and we both listed out, like, these are the games that I would like to play this year. So the question is, how have you done in terms of those gaming resolutions for 2021?
I've done terribly with them. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think I get caught up in what's out now or what do I feel like playing at the moment.
Yep.
While forgetting that I have this list to consult. And I played and beat Hitman 3, but I didn't do the rest of the trilogy. I started Doom 2016 for the second time. Got a little farther, but then again, things distracted me and took me away. I liked what I played a bit. I do want to go back to it. It's just there are plenty of other games to play. Certain things I think are out of my control. I said, for example, that like, I'm leaving Cyberpunk 2077 on this list because the next gen update will come this year and I'll play it then. It hasn't come this year. It's going to be middle of next year.
And who knows if it'll be fixed.
Right. So what a disaster there. So yeah, I've done a bad job. I'm sorry.
I have done an okay job still. So here's the thing. I played Somnium Files near the start of the year. Then I played Outer Wilds, and I played Resident Evil 4, and I played Danganronpa. And then after Danganronpa, nothing else. I did not knock off a single other game on my list. Like, I kind of still want to get to Ori before the end of the year, but I keep saying like, all right, Ori's going to be my next bedtime game. Oh, never mind. This game came out and I want to play it on Switch. Oh, never mind. This game, etc., etc. Bloodborne, Nier, and Final Fantasy VIII aren't happening before New Year's. I could guarantee it. Bloodborne because I am a coward. Nier because I think Matt and I might have far future plans for that. I don't know. And FF8 because it's a whole JRPG and I'm not going to be able to beat that in 2 months when I also go to work and record podcasts and review games.
So here's a question for you. Do you still have your Game Pass subscription active?
Game Pass for PC, yes. I switched back down to just PC for now because I realized I wasn't using the Xbox, at least currently. So I kind of figured like I'm spending like $5 more for no reason.
Sure.
And ended up just downgrading it back to PC. But yes, I still have Game Pass on PC at least.
Okay. Because I think the Ori ports on Switch are good, but it's one of those games where it may do you better to have it like on the bigger screen. Again, depends on if your PC can run it or you chip in for the Xbox for a little bit. But that's one where, yeah, I think if it depends, I guess, where you play the Switch too. Like if you're doing the before bed kind of thing, like that's where a game like Danganronpa will suit you better. But I think Ori is just a gorgeous game and deserves the bigger screen.
I need to get an OLED Switch. Obviously is what I need to do.
Yes.
If I'm ever able to find one of those in the wild anywhere.
As far as the games that we played this year that weren't released in 2021, what is your favorite game from a previous year that you played this year?
So we talked about Pikmin. I really, really loved Pikmin. I'm going to go to Pikmin 2 at some point and see if I still like it then. Outer Wilds, I think, is one of those games that people are going to be talking about for years. But honestly, I think the slam dunk answer, I'm really glad I finally got to play Devotion because it's really, really phenomenal. I really wish that game hadn't been given such a raw deal. And I really hope that Red Candle makes another game because, like, that one has that weird baggage to it, where it's like, oh, China says I'm not allowed to play this game, but I'm going to play it. Screw you, China. And that's pretty much where it falls. So I don't know. I think Devotion is one of those games that I might go back to every few years. It's very, very good.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed that one so much for sure. For me, the easy answer is playing Mass Effect 2 again through the Legendary Edition. Now, granted, that's one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. So that's an easy answer. But if you want one where I had not played it, or at least had not played it as far as I had before, so a new game experience, I would say Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I still have not finished the game, but I'm like 2/3 through it.
You said you were in Lucas's sections last I remember, right?
Yeah, that's kind of where I got to. Like, he's playing that kind of keep away in the bunker, and then you go back to watch the tape, or the cassette tape and all that. Gives you the flashback to show how to make it through the traps that Lucas has set up. So I'm at that cassette tape part. That's where I stopped and just haven't gotten back to it. So a good chunk of the way through the game, at least. But that was excellent. I really enjoyed that.
I am glad that, because I was surprised when you hadn't even gotten to the garage fight.
Right. Yeah.
And that fight is like one of the best parts of the game. The other one being the chainsaw duel. That chainsaw duel is amazing. I'm glad you went back and gave it a shot. Do you have any thoughts about playing Village after you do finish it, if you do finish it?
I have Village coming in through the mail. So
Nice.
Got it super cheap used through Gamefly. Like, had some discount credit and all that. So like for $12, I got Village on PS4, then with the PS5 upgrade for free coming through. So that's a nice get at year's end for a Game Awards Game of the Year candidate. So
like, yeah, $12. Jeez.
Yeah, so pretty good there. You gotta find your good finds when you can get them. So I'll eventually get to that when I'm looking forward to doing that. I would like to finish 7 first, though.
I would recommend finishing 7.
Yeah, I know it's not a requirement, but it's just to kind of close that book.
Yeah, it does add a little more context to some of the things that happen at the dead ass end of Village.
Okay.
But that's really about it. Most of it can be sort of skimmed around.
I wish that Village had not done such a bad job of spoiling what happens at the beginning with Chris. Yeah, so we'll see how that shakes out.
It's okay. They made up for it by putting like 2 entire sections that were very clearly inspired by Silent Hill into the game.
Okay.
One of them is just PT. It's crazy. Another question back from 2019. Say that a friend wanted to listen to original Soundchat and they didn't have much experience with games or the medium's music. Which episode would be a good one to listen to first?
This is always a tough one. And I feel like what I kind of went to was, what do I feel like are our best episodes, or like the best stories behind it? So the first one that came to mind was our episode on Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater and No More Heroes. I feel like that one stands out a lot to me because of Cynthia Harrell and the stories that you brought to the show of her career and the connections, that how she got the gig and how she met Kojima and all that. And then I don't know if we maybe talked about it on the next episode of that show, but how she listened and reached out to us and said like it made her cry with happiness. And it's like, oh man, like it's things like that, it's a show it's very niche and doesn't have the biggest audience base, right? But things like that, when you get to resonate with the person that you're researching and like they really appreciate what you did, I think that really makes it worth it. Similarly, how you had your episode with Matanui Online Game and the stories that could be told with that and the development that it went through, and being able to reach out and to the team and actually you'll get some insight there. Just fantastic. And then to pair it with a game like Grim Fandango, which is just a classic, and really getting to appreciate a whole other genre with like the bebop jazz and all that. I think that's also really a special episode.
I think both of those are really good answers. When I looked at this question, the main place I went from is like, what are games that we've talked about that have very good soundtracks that are not really chiptune? Like, I wanted to stay away from that, obviously.
Sure.
Because people that haven't been playing video games for years, it might grate on them a little bit at the start, but also like what games are the easiest to sort of understand if you don't play video games. So my choice was actually Outer Wilds and Ratchet and Clank, because Outer Wilds, it's a very easy game to explain on the surface of it's a space adventure. You go up in a spaceship and then you go to the planets and you just explore. That's it. That's the whole game. And then Ratchet and Clank then comes in with like this very sort of film-like score, and it's simultaneously like a very well-known franchise within video games, while also like a sort of game that was meant to be a jumping in point of its own series anyways.
Yeah, it's really beginner friendly overall. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like those two would work super well with not only showing like, oh yeah, video game soundtracks have come a really long way. Here's this beautiful like banjo and guitar soundtrack here, and then you've got like this sounds like it would be in an animated film straight up. I think that is kind of important to show like, yeah, this is how far we've come, and you should listen to more so you can learn about where we came from in the first place.
Very good answer as well, for sure. Oh boy, Joe, you know, we've put some work into Best of 2021, but we're still a month away, and so there's still a lot to do. But we usually like to check in and just at this point in time, you know, subject to change, but how are our top 5 soundtracks for the year looking so far?
So right now, my current number one with a bullet is The World Ends With You.
Neo, The World Ends With You.
Neo, The World Ends With You. Yeah, the game that me and 6 other people on Earth played. And then I think number 2 kind of switches back and forth between Chicory and The Greatest Attorney. And Imposter Factory is also in that top 5 for sure. And then I don't know what number 5 is. There are so many options it could be. I'm sure Persona 5 Strikers is going to be in there. I'm sure Fantasian, which I just finished listening to recently, is probably going to at least be in the top 10. Ender Lilies, Death's Door, Eastward. There's a lot of video games that have some damn good soundtracks this year, and I don't really know what my number 5 is currently, much less numbers 6 through 10.
I have a lot of listening to do as well, for sure, but some that really catch my ear at the top of the list is The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And I'm amazed by that. I know Great Ace Attorney has good soundtracks usually, but for whatever reason, Yasumasa Kitagawa did an amazing job.
Yeah, he brought his A game for that one.
Really did with those pair of games in that collection. Persona 5 Strikers really does stand out. It's just more of that same vibe from Persona 5, but some new wrinkles in there, and I think it makes for a really strong soundtrack. I agree. Neo, The World Ends With You is a high contender. So that's what I have in the number 3 slot. Same thing with Chicory. The biggest snub at the Game Awards is Chicory. And that's an amazing soundtrack from Lana Rain. So also high up there. And for number 5, I right now have Bravely Default 2. Revo's work is, I think a lot of people are saying that it's like, it's really good. I don't know if it's as good as the original Bravely Default, but still it's up there. So I think that's a contender for sure. But you're right. There are a lot of other soundtracks to still consider and a lot to listen to still. So we definitely have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, I'm genuinely afraid of, because like I don't think it's not as bad as last year where it was like, oh, we have 30 honorable mentions. We're going to have to trim this down somehow.
Oh, we'll still have to do that. Yeah.
Oh, we'll still have to do that. I don't think it's going to be as bad as last year. The honorable mentions will be making a comeback, but just, man, a lot of great stuff coming out this year. All right. So speaking of 2021 and the many, many games that came out in 2021, how are those 2021 game release backlogs looking?
It's scary. It's real scary. I think there are still games that I'd like to still get, and whether that's, Christmas gifts or finding good, cheap Black Friday deals or things like that. Games that stand out where it's like, oh yeah, I missed that. That's kind of where I am right now. It's not like, oh, I have this collection of games that I bought but haven't touched yet, if that makes sense. So games like Chicory and Death's Door and Imposter Factory are ones that I want to get to on the indie side of things that you just hear all sorts of good things about. As far as the more AAA space, Guardians of the Galaxy is one that I'm going to get to next, actually. Got that coming in through a rental, but also Lost Judgment. For how much I loved the original Judgment. I heard that it wasn't as good, but still a strong game from Ryuga Gotoku Studio. And also Life is Strange True Colors. I know you played that one. And another one that was like, yeah, I heard good things. I want to do that. As far as what I'm playing right now, I'm in the middle of Pokemon Shining Pearl. So, yep, gonna be playing that one for sure.
Basically, what I've heard about Lost Judgment is that its story is very much not as good as the original, but it has the best side content the Yakuza series has ever had.
Yeah.
And the most extensive amount of it. Like, from what I hear, the side content in Judgment might as well be its own separate video game. It's that long. For me, personally, I really would like to get to Persona 5 Strikers sometime this year. I bought it on launch day. It's been installed on my computer since it came out. I loaded it up for 10 minutes to see if it worked on my computer. And then I was like, all right, we'll get to that some other time. And then I just didn't. So I'd like to get to that one before the end of the year. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. It Takes Two. I still want to play with my roommate Ben.
Yeah, that's another one for sure.
I've heard good things about the platforming and stuff in there. Chris Tales, I'm still kind of waiting to hear that there were some patches that made it not have to load before and after every single random encounter.
Yee.
Dodgeball Academia, which I have been told is very, very good by our friend Neil Ronahan from NWR. Lost Judgment, obviously. Moonglow Bay. Technically, I did play that game for like 2 hours at one point, but I have not gone back to it since. I had to make a list of 5 games on my whiteboard, and I had to tell myself, you don't get to start another game until a slot opens up in these 5 games. I had to do that for my own good. Obviously, SMT5 I would like to get to. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, which I have technically started, but I'm not going to continue quite yet. And right now, I'm working through Death's Door, Eastward, Moonglow Bay. As I said before, I've played like 2 hours of it. And Metroid Dread, which I've been streaming with Matt on twitch.tv/Nintendo World Report. Guardians of the Galaxy is probably also up there. I've heard a lot of good things about that game.
Yeah, surprisingly so.
Yeah, so we'll see about that one. That's not a high priority, but I've heard that game get a good amount of praise.
I particularly am going to be interested to hear how it fits into the best of 2021 discussion. Like, does Richard Jacques' score stand out alongside the licensed music that they use? And does that place it highly on the list? We'll have to see. As far as non-gaming media goes, are there any things that you've really enjoyed this year? Movies, TV shows, books, anything like that?
F9. Fast and the Furious is the best movie franchise that's ever been made. And F9 was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was stupid, but they're all stupid. And that's why I love them dearly from the bottom of my heart. Black Widow and Shang-Chi were pretty good. I liked Shang-Chi especially. That movie is great. I haven't seen Eternals. I don't really have a lot of desire in my heart to see Eternals.
Yeah, same.
I don't know why, but I just have no drive to go to a theater and watch that movie.
That's going to be a wait for Disney Plus, I think.
Yeah, that's currently my plan too. But Spider-Man looks like it's going to be good. I'm very excited for Spider-Man. And then on the TV side of Marvel stuff, Loki was very good. I also watched WandaVision. I liked Loki more, and I still have not sat down to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh, you didn't miss too much. It's just more setting up like the Dark Avengers or whatever they're going to call it.
Interesting. I caught up with a podcast, and honestly, it's funny because right when I started listening to the podcast, like 2 weeks later, they posted their last episode. And that show's called The Magnus Archives. It's really good. It's a horror audio podcast that's basically like this institute in London takes statements from people who have seen really weird stuff, like supernatural crap. And it has this whole story. It goes for 200 episodes. Fantastic series. Probably one of my favorite podcasts ever now. It's just great. End of a Life by Calliope Mori is probably my favorite song of the year. Obviously, I had to find a way to put Hololive in here somewhere. But it's a really good song that's basically about her sort of journey through the music industry and how, hey, she finally got her breakthrough. She's there. She's doing music professionally, but a bunch of friends she made when she was trying to like break into the industry left the industry because they didn't get a similar sort of thing, and how she feels guilty about that. And it's a fantastic song. And I don't think it ended this year, but I went back and read all of the webcomic Go Get a Roomie, which is very good. And also very don't go read that if you're a child.
Let's see. I agree with you. A lot of the Marvel stuff this year hit really well. I definitely enjoyed Shang-Chi, and I can't think of a movie I've been looking forward to more than Spider-Man No Way Home.
God, I'm so excited.
Because, man, the buzz around that, and honestly, I can't say poor marketing because the numbers are crazy. I was ready to watch that new trailer recently, and I had it pulled up within 2 minutes, and it was already like 500,000 views in 2 minutes.
That sounds about right.
And it's like, oh my God. So, they do make frustrating decisions. Like, obviously Toby and Andrew are going to be in that movie.
We already we it's super obvious, and they're just hiding. I don't understand why they're hiding it. That's the thing. I don't get it, but I guess we'll find out.
They want the movie pop moment. They want people to bring in their cameras for reactions and things like that. Like, that's what they want. So that is what it is. Interesting theories about who may not make it out of that movie. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. And as far as TV shows go, I got on the Succession bandwagon this year, and that was an excellent choice. We still have yet to dig into season 3. It's about halfway through right now, season 3. But the catch up was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to that. I discovered the McRib commercials because the McRib commercial is back this year. The McRib's back over at McDonald's, and I had never thought of who does the voiceover for the McRib commercials. And now after watching Succession, I can't unhear who does the voice for the McRib commercials. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I have not seen a McRib commercial because I have not had a platform that is allowed to show me ads in several years. Ad block, baby. I'm a bad person. So, obviously, we're doing this episode for a very, very obvious reason. You're celebrating Thanksgiving with your families this week. Turkey or something else. Also, what are 3 side dishes and 1 dessert that you would have at your ideal Thanksgiving feast?
Obviously a very American question. You can get together with families and have a big meal and watch some American football on television and maybe something else if you have your own traditions or whatever. I'm a turkey person. I like turkey, particularly dark meat of turkey. We've probably talked about this on previous episodes, but it could have new listeners listening to this Q&A episode for the first time. So, but I'll also be down with ham. If people like ham, I'm also good with that. So my sides of preferences, I like sweet potato mash. I also like having mac and cheese at Thanksgiving. I think that's a good time. And then we also make this corn casserole, which is like this easy recipe where it's like cornbread mixed with some corn from like a can and sour cream, and like it's all together. It's just It's got like a kind of a cornbread outside, but like a gooey, corny mix. And inside it's really good and nice and baked. And then for dessert, pumpkin pie is the classic. It sounds weird, but like for the American big box in bulk stores like Costco and Sam's Club, there's something about like that big pie with that crust. If you're doing it like a store-bought thing, there's something about that kind of crust that's really good. But you got to get the pumpkin pie right. You can't have it be like too grainy or whatever. But there's something about a really good pumpkin pie. Though I think we're giving a pumpkin cheesecake a try this year, which I cannot wait. Sounds excellent.
That does sound really good. I'm kind of the same. So I have a really big family that's split in multiple branches. So I have multiple Thanksgivings, usually 2. This year, I believe that will be no different for the first time in almost 2 years. Turkey and ham are usually at the main one with the family. I prefer ham in general, but turkey I'll still mess up some turkey. Especially you put some gravy on that. Ooh, That's good. Usually the other house does various types of soup. I don't know why that started. Because their logic, I guess, is like, well, you already had turkey and ham. You don't need more turkey and ham.
It sounds really good, though.
This year, I think they're doing pizza. I don't know. It's a weird choice, but that's what I suppose is happening. In terms of sides, sweet potato casserole or, mashed sweet potatoes. Obviously, 100%. Mainstay. Needs to be there. Candied yams, baby. We have, in my family, a shredded cheese potato casserole that one of my family members makes, like hash brown almost.
That sounds amazing.
Oh, it's so good. It is absolutely delicious. And also, I mean, you can't go wrong with a good salad.
Yeah.
You gotta have some green in there somewhere. And I agree with you. Pumpkin pie is the greatest of all time. It is the best. If you are having anything that's not pumpkin pie, you should be ashamed, unless you're having pumpkin pie and others like pecan pie. I will also mess up a pecan pie if given the option.
Am I right, though, that like pumpkin pie can go wrong easily? Like you can mess up the crust, you can mess up the filling, but when it hits just right, it's perfect.
Yeah. Like bad pumpkin pie is still fine, in my opinion. Like it's still pumpkin pie, but you get a really good pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
And you're going to be thinking about that for the next 3 days.
Yes, absolutely. Let's get a little personal as we wrap up these last couple here. How are you doing? How has it been to produce weekly episodes? And is there any update on Best of 2017?
So on our outline, we sometimes jot down little notes so that we remember what we want to say in regards to that answer. And I just wrote, oops.
For all of them.
It's exhausting, doing weekly episodes, but in a really good way. Like in oh man, I've poured all my energy into this and now I'm going to go lay on the floor for a little while. But oh man, I poured all my energy into that and it was awesome. And generally, I was dealing with a lot of burnout stuff this year. Like a couple weeks ago, I took a whole week off from streaming, which was a lot because I had been streaming 4 times a week before then. And I'm also streaming 4 times a week this week. What is wrong with me? But that's really the only sort of thing that's burnt me out. I think we made a very, very smart decision in introducing the concept of a solo episode of original Soundchat.
Yeah.
So that if one person is super busy and isn't going to have time to do research or is in fact feeling like death, we can still put out an episode that week and it's, no harm, no foul. It's good still. We're both pretty all right at not having somebody to bounce off of. I think you're better at it than I am, but I think we've done a very good job with that at least. As for any update on Best of 2017, well, I'll leave that to you to describe because the answer is going to be the same on both of our parts.
Yeah, so let's hit that one first. We've had it done for a while.
It's been done for over a year.
We've had it written for a long time. It's just a matter of putting that extra workload on for the week, the 2 weeks or whatever. And so we haven't recorded it. And it's just a matter of finding that opening of like, do you have time to do the normal work and this? Which is a shame because I think we really like pulling together, especially the retrospective best of episodes. They're a lot of fun. It's not difficult to record by any means, but it's the edit in those ones. Like that is a lot of edit work, pulling together all those clips and getting them all just right. So yeah, it's been done for a while, a long while, but it's just a matter of finding the time to do it because, especially on the editing front, it is a lot. And I'm amazed that we have kept it up, but you're right. The solo episodes is the best thing we've done for sure for the longevity of the show. And because things are going to come up, you may feel burned out. Things may come up at work where it's just, it's too much. I think just doing the one episode, as much as we like to have different ideas for what to do with the show and all that, we're kind of getting to a point in our lives where, like, especially for all the research that we like to put in, it's plenty fine to do one of these per week. And maybe if we were doing bi-weekly, then we could have more time for trying other things. But we're okay, but also staying busy to the point where I'm on track to start a promotion at work at the start of the new year, which is really nice, but it also comes with more expectations and more work on that front. And at the same time, my fiance and I, we are in the process of building a new house. And so the next couple months here are going to be actually insane. Not only for getting everything ready for the move and all of that, but also making sure that like everything around the current place is all fixed up and looking nice because we have to get the place ready to sell the place and move and all that. It's, oh my gosh, it's going to be a lot on top of everything else. So, and then even then, once we're in the new house, it's the upkeep of the new house and all that goes with it. So doing okay, great in the personal life, honestly. But as far as like balancing everything, it's a juggling act for sure. And so if that means we have to hold off on special episodes like Best of 2017 a little longer because everything is in this right balance right now, that may be the case. So we haven't forgot about it, trust us, but it's more a matter of finding the right time to be able to work on it and release it on top of everything else.
That goes with like every type of bonus episode we want to do. Like, we love to do more composer interviews. I would love to bring on like bigger influencers to sort of talk about their favorite video games and that kind of stuff. We'd love to put out more best of retrospectives. But yeah, like you said, it's just every single one is just an additional piece of work. And sometimes we just don't have time to record it. You don't have time to edit it, etc., etc. That's just how it goes. You got to remember, folks, this is not our job. We are doing this in our free time in a hobbyist sort of thing. So like real life's got to come first. But like for me, it's been a lot of, I'm probably going to try and move to another apartment in the next couple of months because we are so sick of the management in this building. Or like I'm trying to find work that isn't my current job. And I've been sending out applications all over, and who knows if any of those will really amount to anything. But it's pretty much all of that and like a mixture of social things on my side, like some family things that could turn upside down any day now, essentially. So yeah, it just comes down to time, spoons, basically. Cause I know that me saying that is weird. The hardest work I do on this show is I do my research. You're the one that does like the magic that gets it into the state that it is like this really, really good show. Cause we're doing a really good show. Here.
Yeah, I think so.
I really enjoy doing this show. I think people really enjoy it when they hear it. And yeah, it just comes down to, do I have the energy to put this extra time into this thing when I already have so much of it, basically?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way of summing it up. All right, last question.
Yeah, we have the final question. We're done looking behind. We're going to look forward for a second. What are some games that you are expected to talk about in the near future, aka sometime over the next 3 months?
I feel like that's the only time I have kind of planned out. Even then, only half of that. So among the handful of games I've already kind of penned in a couple weeks, finally getting to Fire Emblem Three Houses, which will be nice. I don't know if I'll have any actual hands-on game experience then, but it's time. It's good to talk about that one. I'm also looking forward to talking about Control.
Yeah.
That's one that should be fun for sure.
I'm super excited to learn more about that game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We've talked about for a while how we do need to get to the original Devil May Cry, so that will be happening within the next few months. And then we'll have another Pokemon episode with a couple Pokemon games, these ones spin-offs in conjunction with the Pokemon Legends Arceus release. So if that gets moved back, this will get moved back as well.
Yeah.
But I will be bringing Pokemon Coliseum to the show and some interesting tracks there.
For me, in a couple weeks, we will be returning to the world of Final Fantasy XIV and the phenomenal work of Mr. Masayoshi Soken to talk about Heaven's Word, because Endwalker is coming out in a couple weeks. And wow, I've already finished putting together the Critical 5 for that game. Oh man, it's good. It's a good soundtrack.
Does not surprise me at all.
Oh god, it's great. I'm also very excited to talk about Spiritfarer here in the next couple weeks or so. No Straight Roads at some point in the early days of next year. And then my game for when Legends comes out is I'm going to be talking about Pokemon Conquest, and I don't know how well that's going to go because I have not played it.
Mm-hmm. That's one that you also get to eventually play for Smashterpieces, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. It is Jigglypuff's game because we were desperately searching for not a regular mainline Pokemon game.
So that should be interesting. And I think we should also put out on the table that we will get to Dark Souls. You can guess when that'll happen.
Yeah, sure will.
Well, with that said, I think that will do it for this year's 2021 Thanksgiving Q&A episode. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate having the relative reprieve there. So you can find me on Twitter at Pete Speakeasy. Joe is over at String Pixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want. That's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. It's where Joe's other podcast, Smashterpieces, is hosted. And you can find Smashterpieces and original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, even on Spotify, where we have a feed for the episodes, but also a big playlist where if we talk about a video game track on this show and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to this monster playlist. Joe, any insight onto how that playlist is looking? Just keeps getting bigger and bigger?
Yeah, it's, I'll have the final numbers when we get to the end of Best of 2021. It's big. It's long. You could basically listen for multiple days and not hear a single repeat. It's insane.
And that's not even all the Nintendo music that's not on Spotify, right? So it's crazy.
And that's a lot of our episodes too.
When you're done listening, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us, some suggestions for games to cover in 2022. Definitely looking forward to continuing the effort that we put forth on user-suggested games for this year. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Tomas Dvorak.
I will be talking about Akash the Car. That should be a pretty good episode. That we're recording really soon, so it's going to be weird and out of date and all that. Please forgive us. Anyway, to play us out, we usually like to highlight this track because it's about cooking, it's about food. What a Thanksgiving way to celebrate than the remix or track of Shaberu DS Cooking Navi that is featured in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and that's composed by Toshiyuki Sudo. It's just a good one to end this episode on. So thanks so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.